chapter 17. Jesus said to his disciples, "Things that cause people to sin are bound to come, but woe to that person through whom they come. It would be better for him to be thrown into the sea with a millstone tied around his neck than for him to cause one of these little ones to sin. So watch yourselves. If your brother sins, rebuke him, and if he repents, forgive him. If he sins against you 7 times in a day, and 7 times comes back to you and says, 'I repent,' forgive him." The apostles said to the Lord, "Increase our faith." And he replied, "If you have faith as small as a mustard seed, you can say to this mulberry tree, 'Be uprooted and planted in the sea,' and it will obey you. Suppose one of you had a servant ploughing or looking after the sheep. Would he say to the servant when he comes in from the field, 'Come now and sit down to eat'? Would he not rather say, 'Prepare my supper, get yourself ready, and wait on me while I eat and drink? After that you may eat and drink'? Would you thank the servant because he did what he was told to do? So you also, when you have done everything you were told to do, should say, 'We are unworthy servants, we have only done our duty.'" Now on his way to Jerusalem, Jesus travelled along the border between Samaria and Galilee. As he was going into a village, 10 men who had leprosy met him. They stood at a distance and called out in a loud voice, "Jesus, Master, have pity on us." When he saw them, he said, "Go, show yourselves to the priests." And as they went, they were cleansed. One of them, when he saw he was healed, came back praising God in a loud voice. He threw himself at Jesus' feet and thanked him, and he was a Samaritan. Jesus asked, "Were not all 10 cleansed? Where are the other 9? Was no one found to return and give praise to God except this foreigner?" Then he said to him, "Rise and go. Your faith has made you well."
There is a fairly old, but nevertheless true joke about teachers. What's the best 3 things about being a teacher? Christmas holiday, Easter holiday, and the summer holiday. Stephen's even come dressed as though it is summer holiday. Let me tell you about my summer holiday. School broke up on Friday. On Saturday, we packed our suitcases and we went off to Canada for 3 weeks. It was fantastic. We went so we could see our son Nick and his wife Pat. We hadn't seen them for slightly more than a year. The holiday started well. We landed rather than crashed. I've mentioned before my entirely rational fear of flying. Remember, always sit at the back of a plane. You never hear about planes backing into mountains. We had a free upgrade to our hire car, a black Jeep Cherokee. It was lovely. One of the best cars I've ever driven. We stayed in a lovely hotel. We saw Nick, we saw Pam. Everywhere we went, offered chicken wings and burgers. There was a point where I thought actually the plane had crashed and I was in heaven. During the holiday, we went shooting in a shooting range. Proper shooting, not with air rifle type things, but with guns. I chose to shoot at Dr. Death, a zombie, or medic of sorts. Handguns, machine guns, magnums, 45s. You feel lucky, punk. That type of stuff. Probably not the best place to be talking about. Annette didn't. Annette took the moral high ground, so she just stood and watched. We're ready though. If a zombie apocalypse happens, me and Steve, we're there. Annette, not a chance. We saw Niagara Falls. He was okay, I suppose. Natural wonder, shooting zombies. We came back to the Isle of Wight for Cowswick. Stephen had some gigs. I believe that's a musical term, in Cows. Stephen wanted to stay for his GCSE results. He's still living with us, so those results were obviously okay. And then we wanted to go somewhere warm. £400 would take Stephen, Annette and I to Malta. And the forecast was 30 degrees on Sunday and Monday, 31 degrees on Tuesday, Wednesday and Thursday, a quite chilly, put your jumper on, 29 degrees on Friday and Saturday, and 30 on Saturday. However, Stephen said he wanted to stay on the island. Why go all the way to a sunny island when you can stay here on the sunny Isle of Wight? So we stayed. On Sunday it rained. On Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday it rained. On Thursday it was cloudy in the morning, and then in the afternoon it rained. Friday was a better day, kind of Manchester weather, drizzle. Rather than going somewhere nice and warm and lovely, we stayed here, cold and wet and miserable. I blame Stephen because it's Stephen's fault. During the week, Tony sent out the rota for the tours for September and October. I got Luke chapter 17 verses 1 to 19. What does it say right there at the start? It says, forgive. Rats. There it is, black and white. Forgive 7 times. Forgive him for the rain on Monday. Forgive him for the rain on Tuesday. Forgive him for the rain on... So I have forgiven him. I had to. It says quite clearly, black and white. Forgive. There's no grey areas. It is very, very clear. One day, God was looking down at earth from heaven and saw all of the evil that was going on. He decided to send an angel down to check it out. So he called one of his best angels and sent the angel down to earth for a time. When she returned, she told God, yes, it is bad on earth. 95% is bad. Only 5% is good. God was so shocked and disappointed by this that he thought he'd best to check. So he called over another angel. And he sent that angel down to earth too. When the angel returned, she said, yes, the first angel was right. 95% bad. Only 5% good. God said that he had to do something. So he decided to send an email. And he emailed the 5% that were good. And he wanted to encourage them and give them something to look forward to. Do you know what the email said? Oh, so you didn't receive the email then? We all do bad. We all need forgiveness. Things that cause people to stumble are bound to come, the passage says. If your brother or sister sins against you, rebuke them. And if they repent, forgive them. Things will happen that are not good. People will say and do things that are not nice. We will do things that are not good. We will probably say and do things that other people consider not nice. Annette's got a list that she keeps of everything I've done. We need forgiveness too. Look at the number 7 for a moment. The most obvious place to use the number 7 is right at the beginning. The world is created in 7 days. Therefore, right from the start, 7 is about completion and being finished. The theme continues with 7 throughout the Bible about completeness or divine perfection. Naaman must bathe 7 times to be cleansed. Joshua must walk around Jericho 7 times. And 7 priests must blow 7 trumpets outside the wall for success. 7 of each clean animal goes on the ark. 7 stems on the tabernacle lampstand. 7 qualities of the Messiah in Isaiah. 7 signs in John's Gospel. 7 parables in Matthew 13. 7 last words of Jesus on the cross. 7 letters to the 7 churches in Revelation. 7 stars in Christ's right hand. 7 seals. 7 angels. 7 represents completeness, perfection and wholeness. Jesus says in Luke, if they sin 7 times and they come back 7 times, forgive. Matthew happens to go even further. He says 7 times 7, or sometimes in some translations 77. Forgive completely, totally, always, until there's no more forgiveness that you can do. It's not, oh dear fella, you reached your 8 today, off you go. Keep on forgiving. This can be hard though. I usually show funny videos. The next video isn't a funny video, but it is a true video.
Gary Ridgway sat there stone-faced as victims' relatives damned him and mocked him.
He's an animal. I wish for him to have a long, suffering, cruel death. He's gonna go to hell, and that's where he belongs.
But then the emotionless facade finally cracked when the father of one of his victims appeared to surprise him with a dose of human kindness.
Mr. Ridgway,
Forgiveness is hard. Just take a moment to think about the other people in the video. Obviously, my emphasis is on the Christian and the Christian forgiving. But what about the response of the parents of the other girls that Gary Ridgway killed? It's entirely understandable. It is possible that one day they will forgive him, that they'll be able to do the same as the dad in the video. But that isn't always easy. It certainly isn't always immediate. Sometimes forgiveness takes time. In the Bible study notes, this is fab by the way, in the Bible study notes, if you're finding it difficult, it says, if you've not noticed it, it says there, note, please speak to somebody and they will talk things through with you. Forgiveness is hard. It's especially hard when forgiveness is not being sought. Jesus faces that on the cross, as he indeed faced everything on the cross. Jesus' response is, Father, forgive them. They know not what they do. Ultimately, it is God who forgives anyway. All sin, all bad things separate us from God. And so it is the forgiveness of God that is being sought. Those that crucified Jesus, the Romans physically, the Jews through twisting the laws, mankind through history, us through our actions today, did not and do not always ask for forgiveness. Bitterness can result. So Jesus shows us how to respond. Give it to God. Let God forgive. And then we can move on. I don't know whether Hannah Murphy remembers the first question she asked when I first took over, when I first took the first Sunday Fun Day here for the very first time, many years ago. She said something like, and I'm paraphrasing, how can you be a Christian without being walked all over by people who think all you can ever do is just forgive them? Susan read out a prayer last week that I believe she said, or whenever you last spoke, that she had next to a computer. It's attributed to Mother Teresa. One of the lines in it is, be kind anyway. I have that on the wall in my office as well. I also have a quote from the Dalai Lama which says, be kind whenever possible. It is always possible. That doesn't make us weak. It actually makes us incredibly strong. My favourite quote that I've got on my wall, that does take some explaining as to why it's on my wall, is from the film Harvey. I've shown it before, I'll probably show it again.
Holy heavens, man, haven't you any righteous indignation?
Oh, Doctor, years ago, my mother used to say to me, she'd say, in this world, Elwood, you must be, she always called me Elwood. In this world, Elwood, you must be oh so smart, or oh so pleasant. Well, for years I was smart. I recommend pleasant. You may quote me.
Pleasant isn't a weakness, it's incredibly strong. Granted, he believes in a 6-foot giant invisible rabbit, so there are issues. But forgiveness, moving on, pleasantness, all those things. Give it to God and move on. Let God deal with the hurt and difficulties and challenges. Use your brain, use a bit of common sense, but realise, let's give it to God and move on. If people who have hurt you return and ask for forgiveness, Jesus says you have to forgive. So forgive. Sometimes that's hard. Sometimes all you can say is, I want to forgive, and I will continue to try, with God's help, to forgive. Let me tell you another time God was in heaven with his angels. The angels were all busy watching and monitoring the earth, watching men and women muck it up, in big ways, with war and selfishness, with death and destruction and greed. And the angels saw these people who called themselves Christians doing their best, but generally failing, and generally mucking it up as well, in little things as well as big things, being more worried about buildings and altars and traditions than loving one another and caring for their fellow men and women. The angels talked, and the bravest were sent in to God to tell God what they had seen was happening. The angel turned to God and said, it just doesn't seem to be working, letting these Christians be you on earth. What's the plan B if it doesn't work? God looked at the angel and said, there is no plan B. We're it. You and I are on the A team. Dun, dun, dun. Thank you. We are super Christians. There is no plan B. We are told to act, to get on with being the best Christians we can. We're told to act now. What do we want? Low flying aircraft noises. When do we want it? Meow. So, that was good, wasn't it? That was good. We are told to act now. The passage that we read, that was read, seems a little odd. You would expect the passage to end with God saying, "Well done, good and faithful servant. Take a rest. I'm well pleased with you today." But it doesn't. It ends with, "And now do this." No rest for the servant. In fact, feel privileged to be the servant of such a wonderful master. Now we know the Bible says these other things in there, so there's no contradiction. We are taught quite clearly in all those theological courses, Alpha and Christianity Explored, to look at the big picture. So there is no contradiction. We will hear those phrases one day, "Well done, good and faithful servant." But that's when the day is done. Elliot Ness, or Kevin Costner in The Untouchables, said, "Never stop fighting till the fight is done." The fight is done when either Jesus returns or we return to Jesus. Nike said it best, and it takes a lot for me to quote a sporting brand. Just do it. It's like, dare I say the word, it's like exercise. All of these people who are healthy and fit and run marathons and stuff, I'm basing this on research, by the way, not any personal experience, they have to start at some point. I hate lifts. In fact, I'm taking steps to avoid them. I was pleased with that. I bought a bicycle last weekend. It's a lovely bike. It has spent the entire week in the hallway. This has caused no tension in our marriage whatsoever. I know what I should have done, but I have excuses. Rain, cold, laziness. All fairly valid excuses at 6 o'clock in the morning. But we shouldn't have those excuses for not being the best Christian we can be. Or, according to Annette, riding my bike to work. I broke this arm when I hit a car on a bicycle when I was little. I broke this arm. I've told you these before. When gravity took hold and I fell from a climbing frame. I broke this leg when I went to kick a football, only to discover it was a rock, not a football. I was born with a hole in my heart, so I have a scar from here to here. I was born with a thing called exanthus, which is when your stomach's born on the inside, so I have all these scars here. I have a scar here when I ran into a brick wall after my dad came on. I went, "Daddy!" and ran and fell into a brick wall. I was little, it wasn't like I was 30. The doctor put a plaster on my arm and made it better. The doctor put a plaster on this arm and made it better. He put some kind of bandage on my ankle and made that better. I don't know why I didn't get a cast. That would have been pretty cool. I had butterfly stitches all down here. I'm too young to remember the stitches in my stomach, but I must have had some. I had stitches in my head. They made me better for a time, but I still hurt myself. I'm still just as clumsy. If I play chicken with my new bike and the car will win, and I will need stitches and plaster casts. But what Jesus offers is total healing. The NIV says, "Your faith has made you well." The King James Version, which is the one God originally wrote the Bible in, the proper one, the King James Version says, instead of that, "Rise and go, your faith has made you whole." That's nice. There's the true meaning. God has restored us as we're supposed to be, inside out. Those doctors did a relatively good job on me, although the hole in my heart scar looks like he went for a drink before he went and did the operation. But no matter how good a job those doctors did on me, I'm on a downward trajectory towards death. Everyone born has at some point so far died. But God makes us whole. He heals us and He restores us. He makes us well and He saves us forever. And He forgives. The greatest forgiveness story is the prodigal son. There are lots of variations of this story in fiction, like the end of The Railway Children. Daddy, my daddy, when Johnny Agata's running down the station platform. I'm a middle-aged man. I'm not going to admit that I cried, but if I did, I'd cry at that. This one is from the #1 Ladies Detective Agency. A teacher's son has been kidnapped. Mara Moxway, the detective, has found the child and has brought him back to the teacher in her van. She turned to the van and signalled to the child within. The door opened and his son came out. And the teacher cried out and ran forward and stopped and looked at Mara Moxway as if for confirmation. She nodded and he ran forward again, almost stumbling, an unlaced shoe coming off, to seize his son and hold him while he shouted wildly, incoherently, for the village and the whole world to hear his joy. The story of the prodigal son is equally the story of the running father. Mumford & Sons said in the next favourite Mumford & Sons song at the moment, Roll Away Your Stone, it seems that all my bridges have been burned, but you say that's exactly how this grace thing works. It's not the long walk home that will change this heart, but the welcome I receive with a restart. These are stories of the prodigal son. It should really be called the running father, who waited every day for his son to come home. The son who had rejected him so badly, but when he saw him from a long way off, ran to him and hugged him and kissed him. Let's just for a moment go back to the miserable, raining weekend at the end of the summer holidays. I clearly have forgiven, haven't I? It's evidence by that. There's no bitterness there at all. On the first day, we weren't in the sun in Malta. Annette and I went for a walk. As we were walking down the hill to get some food, there was a purpose to the walk, my phone rang and it was our daughter Hannah. She said, "Where are you?" I said, rather begrudgingly, "Walking down to East Cowes." "Oh good," she said. "I didn't know if you were in the country." "Can I talk to Mum?" No one ever really wants to talk to me. "Can I talk to Mum?" So I passed the phone to Annette. 40 minutes later, we were in the hospital with Hannah because she was most unwell. If we had been in Malta, warm, tanned, happy, we wouldn't have been there for Hannah. During the week, Annette phoned her mum to tell her about Hannah. Annette's mum asked her if she was coming up to Preston during the holiday. Annette said perhaps. Annette's mum then explained that she had a hospital appointment and really wanted Annette to be there with her. If we had been in Malta, warm, tanned, happy, we wouldn't have been there for Annette's mum. I believe in coincidences, don't you? Or is it possible, maybe, just possible, there's something else going on? I'm not for a moment suggesting that if we'd been in Malta, sunning ourselves, Hannah wouldn't have been okay, or Annette's mum wouldn't have gone with another one of her daughters. But by being here, on the island, we could help. We also got to go to London, and I watched Mamma Mia, and it was fabulous. But that's a different story altogether. I read my testimony last week on the wall. There's a typo in it, which I will blame Tony for. I'll forgive him. But the last line says something about God is constantly amazing. That was true 14 years ago when I became a Christian. That was true 5 weeks ago, realising how lucky we were that we were able to be here and help the people that we love and care for. That was true on Friday night when I sat down to write this, and it was true today. Sat listening to Stephen and George sing about Happy Day, the greatest day in history. We're not like Doctor Who and Clara and there's some kind of trick where he manages to have to die but doesn't, and it's incredibly predictable. No spoilers. Good. It's about God coming to earth and actually dying to sacrifice himself for us because he loves us. That's the greatest day in history. God gives us the honour and privilege to be his ambassadors on earth. There is no plan B. We are it. Just do it. God says forgive people, because it's good for you to forgive. If you can't forgive, then let me deal with it, God says. Because as the quote from Mother Teresa says, ultimately, it's between God and us anyway. Thank you.